Good afternoon, and welcome to the National Press Club. I'm Vivian Valberg, president of the club and correspondent for the Daily Oklahoman. I want to welcome all those National Press Club members and guests who are in our audience today, and also those listening to this luncheon live over the more than 260 stations of the National Public Radio Network. In addition, this luncheon will be carried on a delayed basis by the more than 1,100 cable television stations affiliated with C-SPAN, the Cable Satellite Public Affairs Network. If you have questions for our speaker, and I hope that you will, please write them on the cards which are at your table and send them up to me. I'll ask as many as time permits. You should know that our speaker next Monday will be Senator Robert Dole, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and on Thursday our speaker will be Alan Newharth, chairman and president of the Gannett Company, which has just introduced a new national newspaper. Now for the introduction of our distinguished head table guests. If you will withhold your applause until I've finished introducing them all, and if they would stand as I call their names. The Washington Bureau Chief of the Scripps League newspapers who organized today's luncheon, Lee Roderick. The United States Deputy Chief of Protocol, Thomas Nassif. The Minister of Trade of the Philippines, His Excellency Roberto Ungpin. National Editor of Hearst Newspapers, Joseph Kingsbury Smith. The Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, the Honorable John Holdridge. The Ambassador of the Philippines, His Excellency Benjamin T. Romualdez. Publisher of the Washington Times, Jim Whalen. The Minister of Information of the Philippines, His Excellency Gregoria Sindanya. United Press International Diplomatic Correspondent Jim Anderson. United States Senator from Hawaii, the Honorable Daniel K. Inouye. Prime Minister of the Philippines, His Excellency Cesar Virata. From Crane Communications, the Chairman of the National Press Club Speakers Committee, Stanley Cohen. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines, His Excellency Carlos Romulo, I'm sorry. The Associated Press diplomatic correspondent, George Guetta. The Minister of Defense of the Philippines, His Excellency Juan Ponce Enrile. American Ambassador to the Philippines, the Honorable Michael Armacost. President of the National Press Club of the Philippines, Ben Rodriguez. Assistant General Counsel, International Affairs of the Treasury Department, Russell Monk. And the Chicago Tribune diplomatic correspondent, John McLean. Thank you. Our speaker today is the President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos. It has been 16 years since President Marcos came to the United States on an official visit, and 16 years since we first welcomed him to our podium at the National Press Club. When he appeared before us then, he had just been elected president of the former American colony, which became an independent nation in 1946. We knew Marcos was a war hero. He got so many medals in World War II that when the young Major Marcos met four-star General Omar Bradley, the general saluted him. We also knew he was a persuasive fellow. How else could he have managed to get his wife, who is known to be strong and bright, to marry him after they'd known each other for only 11 days? And we knew he was experienced in overcoming political adversity. After all, the first case Mr. Marcos ever won as a lawyer was when he successfully defended himself from prison against a charge of murdering a political opponent of his father. The president of the press club at that time, Win Booth, remarked at the great warmth of the greeting Mr. Marcos received in 1966 and said, and I quote, "Your very presence reminds us that you and your great people are the faithful allies of our country in time of trouble. And that, sir, is something the American people and the men and women assembled in this room are not about to forget," end quote. But much has happened in those 16 years. In the interim, Mr. Marcos declared martial law, or what he called constitutional authoritarianism, and did not lift it for 11 years. There have been charges of corruption, abuses of human rights, and political repression, and recently the Archbishop of Manila called openly for him to resign. But through it all, Mr. Marcos has remained president, and this week, President Reagan warmly welcomed him, stressing the many common ties between the two countries. The New York Times recently said, quote, "In a country that is deeply sensitive to style, Ferdinand Marcos has it, and it has allowed him to take the sweeping actions that in essence converted the nation from an ill-functioning, raucous but free democracy into his personal fief and seemingly permanent possession," end quote. President Marcos comes to us today as the head of a nation with a long friendship with the United States, a nation considered crucial to America's defense strategies in Asia. We are eager to hear what Mr. Marcos has to say. It's my pleasure to present to you Ferdinand Marcos, President of the Philippines.
Well, thank you very much, Madam President. Distinguished guests, my friends. It certainly is gratifying that in the course of my present visit to the United States,